All right, the other IT superheroes that we're going to recognize here today, we're not going to hear full-out presentations. We're going to have just a little dialogue with them, and they're just inspirational stories. And this next one is really, it's in the area of education. And for those that were at JNUC last year, you'll remember that I had told you a little bit about my background, and that at the age of 16, my intent was that I was going to follow my dad into the trucking business. Noble profession, but it just wasn't for me, and I didn't realize it yet until an Apple IIe got wheeled into the classroom at the age of 16, and my life was changed forever. So the opportunity to put technology in front of students is something that I connect with at an incredibly deep level. To introduce our next IT superheroes, though, I want to bring somebody from JAMF up on stage to help me. So I would like to introduce you to our global evangelist for education, David Saltmarsh. David?
Let's go right on to there. Awesome. Welcome and thank you, everyone. I'd like to invite our two speakers on stage while I introduce them to kind of speed things along a little bit. The two people we have today come from different walks of life a little bit. We have Vicki Lyons from La Crosse, Wisconsin. Vicki is the Director of Technology and Media Services. She's also a distinguished educator for Apple. She's also a COSIN, which is the National Organization for Technology Leaders, as a Certified Educational Technology Leader. We also have Blair Anderson. He has come along as a classroom teacher, as you heard yesterday, from a music experience, as a teacher for years, as a music teacher, but now a technology director for a decade, from Shawnee Heights in Topeka, Kansas. We have I'll let you know, I'm worried about saying JAMF Pro, but we also have a customer of Shawnee Mission, and that was my number one thing to get through today. Rather than starting off right away and asking for details, because number one, I have to speed things along, I'm also overwhelmed by what I just saw from Fletcher. I'll just say that both of them come from, if you just scale what Fletcher showed down to about 10,000, that's what they're dealing with, all right? We're really here to talk about the stories that they have in their journey. And if there's one thing I've learned from getting to talk to a lot of people is we're at different stages of our journey with Apple and with JAMF, but we're also having multiple layers. So I'd like to get into the personal layer. For Blair, as a former teacher, how do you think that's influenced your leadership within the technology department?
I think teachers have one of the toughest jobs on a day in and day out. You're more worried about teaching what you're going to have to teach the kids every day, but you also are playing nurse and parent and grandparents, and there's so many things that pull at them throughout the day. So anything that we do with IT, it has to be easy for them to be for them to implement it into their classroom. I remember one of my first mistakes as an IT director was saying, we're going to require all of our kindergarten students to use complex passwords. And it took me sitting in a lab with 30 kindergartners at one of our elementary schools to realize that was not the best decision. So we reversed that. So that's the one that always sticks with me. But anything you implement, you always have to go and test how it's going to impact the classroom or observe it. And if you've never been into a classroom or don't go in on a regular basis, especially from an IT perspective, it's very important to do that.
Perfect. And Vicki, welcome to Between Two JAMFs,
Yeah,
by the way. I've met you at one of the COSIN events. I mentioned you're a certified educational technology leader. How is your relationship with COSIN, and I've seen you at various roles, influenced and maybe brought you along professionally in your career?
Well, one of the things that we need to do always in leadership is to connect with people. And so besides this community of JAMF Nation, being a part of an organization like COSIN that allows us to connect at a leadership level is very important. COSIN is the Consortium for School Networking. It's a national organization that advocates for technology and education in many, many ways. One of the things that they've done very well is they have designed a framework for skills an essential framework for skills for all of us to know what we're supposed to do with educational technology in schools. And so that, along with my experience here and my experience with the Apple Distinguished Education Program, give me people that I connect with so that I can continue my learning and do my job even better.
Terrific, thanks. As far as your journey with Jamf and Apple, I know, Blair, you're a little newer to it. You've recently made some changes, and you're new to Jamf. I'd love to hear, what was your motivation for that and your goals?
We were, when we implemented iPads about 5 years ago, we actually went with Jamf, and we decided at that time to go to a competitor. And but then this spring we gave our staff the chance to pick what laptop they want, just like IBM. And so they had the option of a PC or Mac, and so about 90% of them chose the Mac. And so we were looking at that piece of it.
Was everybody on Microsoft before that?
Everybody was on Microsoft before then. So so that was just 90% of our staff. We still have quite a bit of Microsoft, but Apple is coming up quick. But then we also wanted to, since the teachers had the iPads, and then they're going to have the Macs, we also wanted to help clean up the classroom. So we bought Apple TVs, the 4th generation. So with all of that, we looked at our then MDM, and determined that it was not going to be what we needed. So we went back to Jamf and have been very, very happy, great jump start. So and it's allowed us to get apps out to all devices.
I appreciate you, by the way, being delicate. You got to watch what you say. You don't want to take air out of the presentation. Right? When I was speaking with Blair earlier, I had asked him, why he was interested in Jamf, and the very first thing you had told me was what?
Jamf Nation. And it is a wonderful, I know everybody in this room uses it, but even when we were not using Jamf, we were using Jamf Nation website to get a lot of support and questions answered to how other people are doing. So it's a great resource to have.
Yeah, so thank you all for helping us earn your business.
And so, Vicki, I know you've been a long-time Jamf, long-time. There's new things that are coming out, and we've seen this growth from Apple, particularly in the last 6 months. I'm curious on what you're most excited about, maybe what you've implemented, and what you see as the advantage for students.
Okay, I'll tell you about that, but I do want to just mention this. In the early 2000s, a colleague of mine from Menominee went to Barstow Street, and we visited a couple of people who were putting together this product called Jamf, and we were very excited about it. And when I got to La Crosse, it was the time to really be able to use that and use that well. And so when we really looked at our one-to-one, and we look at all of the things we're trying to do with supporting our teachers and our students, we really believe that the management piece of Jamf lets us really manage what our users need, which is what we've been talking about, especially in that classroom. And we've started mostly with our special education area. And the reason for that is special education teachers are natural personalized learning teachers. That's what they do. That's how they're trained. And when we can give them tools that connect with them and allow them to personalize learning more efficiently through the things that Jamf has done with Apple School Manager and with Classroom and all of those things, it lets us support them even better. And the self-service side of what we use Jamf for, it is our portal. And our teachers know that that's where they go, and now our kids know that's where they go to get their resources, and it makes everything better.
Terrific. And Blair, any comments to the new Apple technology that's been released in the last 6 months?
We love it. We were able to be on a pilot with the new features this spring, and so implemented that into a classroom, and so we continued that on. We currently have one classroom at our middle school that's doing the shared iPad and then also the classroom app. And the teacher absolutely loves it. It allows her to have full control of that, and it takes us out of her classroom completely. She can reset, Apple IDs, managed Apple IDs that are owned by the district instead of having to deal with the personal Apple IDs that we've been dealing with for years. And then we continue to look at deploying out the classroom app, especially at our high school and middle school. We're just waiting for that integration between our SIS and Apple School Manager. But as soon as that hits, we're going to be pushing it out the next day.
Excellent. The other aspect, and we are talking about IT superheroes, your professionals. Blair, in your organization, I've heard you talk about your hiring practices of looking for coachable abilities in people when you first hire them, and then perhaps some of your IT are a little incognito or undercover IT. I'd love to hear about your process of looking at people from a coachable, and who exactly is managing the day-to-day operations with Jamf Pro.
In our district, when we hire staff for our department, we don't always look at the knowledge and expertise and degrees and certifications. We want somebody that's going to be able to work with our existing team, be coachable, want to learn, and just cares about education. We know that we can't always match what they would earn in the corporate world, but you have to bring them. You want those same people working for you in education. You just have to figure out other ways to do that. And so we provide a lot of things that maybe other companies cannot. But we also have a lot of superheroes, especially at Shawnee Heights. And I have two of them with me here today. Trevor Keeling, our network admin, and Chris Hathaway, who was helping us with Jamf, and a whole bunch of my other staff back at the office. And I know that they're watching live, so a shout out to them. And my department is what makes everything work for us in our district. They spend a lot of hours, day, night, and weekends making sure that they meet the expectations that are placed upon us. We also have principals working for us, librarians, instructional coaches, our wives or spouses, because as everybody knows in IT, it's a lot of long hours and days and emergencies, you get called in. So, and just everybody in this room, I think, is a hero.
Excellent. I'm going to stop and mention this now. I know we have a session later today that goes into greater detail of that. Can you just tell us when that is, the session?
I'm doing a session at 2:45 today on this stage, empowering educators through collaboration. We're going to actually kind of dive into what we do at Shawnee Heights and how we include educators in our decision-making process and how we work with them and how we communicate with them of what's going on. So feel free to join, 2:45 in this room.
Excellent. I didn't want us to, because I know we're speeding things along. Now, Vicki, I met you several years ago, and I know how excited you were about to try to make some changes within your organization. I met some of your staff, and they were enthusiastic. What have you seen in your superheroes that has evolved over the last several years?
Well, you know, when you come into an organization, there's a culture that's there, and Fletcher talked about that culture. And one of the very, very important things is to learn who the people are that you're working with. And what I had come into is a group of dedicated people that really wanted to make a difference in the lives of kids and in the lives of teachers. They just needed an opportunity to do that. And so 4 of them are here today, Brendan Conway, and Dan Lewandowski, and Kat Ellingson, and Joe Olinger. And this team, along with the others back at La Crosse, are the team that comes together and continually learns. So when we started our journey of one-to-one about 6 years ago, we sat, and we still do. We dream together, we vision together, we argue, we point out what's wrong, we point out what's right. But in the end, we all know that we're going to come to the same conclusion, and that is, what do our end users need? And when do they need it, and how are we going to let them do their jobs better? And so I'm just very privileged to be able to work alongside them and make their lives as easy as they can be with what I do.
Terrific. Now, getting to towards the end, I've done several presentations for different audience about trying to bridge IT, the systems and instructional, the example from COSN, your example coming from that. The dilemma is when I do it, I get about a third who are like, we're doing it too. I'm sure about a third of you are already doing it. A third is really wanting to if they could figure it out. And there might be a third, you know, usually I get the arms crossed or then the instructional that roll their eyes. I would love to know how you've gotten to that stage. If you have any advice, Blair, for people, recommendations or resources for someone who's trying to bring the groups together to get to the point that you are.
It's all about leadership, especially at the top in our district. And our board, they want us to work together and collaborate. And when we're making a technology purchase, it starts with curriculum. And curriculum is what drives all our technology decisions. And so it's not us just saying, hey, let's throw iPads out and here you go, enjoy them. It's all the pre-planning and making sure all of that is done before you even start to talk about technology. Because technology is just one tool in the tool belt when you're teaching students. So it shouldn't just be focused just on the tech piece. It has to be everything else. So we do a lot of pre-planning and a lot of discussion, and then just working together with the various groups involved in that process to make sure we have a vision and a timeline put together of how that's going to be deployed.
Excellent. Now, Vicki, we started off saying there's lots of layers to where people are in their journey. I've heard from you the multiple layers of equity in schools, and some that aren't doing the Apple might think that equity just starts with giving some kind of technology. Can you speak to how you see those other layers, getting devices out into the community, has even helped you getting community support, particularly because most people will be curious on how it's helped you with gaining financial stability or sustainability?
Sure. One of the things what Fletcher said, everybody needs. And in our organization, everybody needs. That means equity for each and every child. So when we started discussing our one-to-one, one of the things that we really did is spent time talking about what do we mean by equity. Equity is not about a piece of technology. Equity is about having the powerful tools that you want to have in your hands so that when you are to a point where you want to do more, you have what you need to do that with. And if you have in your hands only something that can take you only this far, then that's all the farther you're going to go. And so we made the decision to go with the iPad and now the MacBook for a number of reasons, particularly because we knew that we wanted powerful tools that worked offline. We wanted to have the ability to have kids download information and take it with them so that, if you've got a 6th grader and they have a device that requires internet at home and they live out in the coulees of La Crosse, they're out in a region where they don't have internet, or they're in a home that doesn't provide that for some reason, they're not going to leave their home and go to the library at 6 o'clock at night. I mean, would any of us accept that as reality for us? We never would. So why would we do that for our children? And so we really believe that having those devices brought equity and allowed every child the opportunity to not only learn today, but to really learn for themselves and to take themselves further in their achievement. And that really has allowed us as a community to support this through sustainable budget numbers, okay? So our Board of Education and our superintendent and all of our departments in our school district, we basically voluntarily gave up 10% of our budgets to start this program. And that, along with community support, really has sustained us in La Crosse. It is the thing when parents come up to you and they say, thank you. Thank you for giving my child something that I could never give him or her. That's what makes this so powerful for all of us and why we do what we do.
Yeah, absolutely. Blair said a moment ago that it starts with leadership, and frankly, that's why the two of them are on stage right now. When I spoke with both of them, the reason why they inspired me so much is, one, there was no magical money fairy that came along and afforded all of this, right? You were deeply committed to making something happen for these kids. And Blair, when I talked to you about how you found the money to put technology in front of kids, you specifically said it's not about putting technology in front of kids, and this is your teacher background. It is about teacher effectiveness, and it is about student learning and getting everybody aligned on that. And then, Vicki, when I spoke with you, and I had never heard it stated so clearly before, that if we don't provide technology, then the wealthy children are going to be using awesome technology, and the underserved children are not going to be using any technology. And if we provide substandard technology to everybody, the wealthy kids are going to be using awesome technology, and the less fortunate children are going to be using substandard. So let's provide awesome technology to everybody. Back in the day, we didn't provide new textbooks to the wealthy kids and use textbooks to the underserved kids. So that notion of student equality is what got the budget for making this happen. And if you want to see what an aligned team around a purpose. I started this out by saying IT superheroes don't just do the what. They first focus on the why. We sent a camera crew out to La Crosse to just interview a few people about why this matters. And we didn't give them any leading questions. They just spoke. And you can see what an aligned team looks like just in this 1-minute video.
I think what's so neat about the La Crosse School District is we have such a diverse population here, and we celebrate that. We welcome that, and we want to try to make every kid successful.
I was so excited when I learned that we were going one-to-one. We made a difference for all kids, but the kids that we really made huge impact with are the kids that didn't have technology at home. I really saw that when we had even one lab of computers in our classroom, it was really making a difference. But even with 30 computers in the classroom, I couldn't make the same impact that I can when each student has an iPad that they can bring home. They have 24/7 learning.
It has taken away that feel of the haves and have-nots. It's given kids equal access. Kids equal access in the classroom and at home.
It really does equalize the playing field. And that is so important.
The iPads have just really opened doors to a new type of learning.
That instant information seeking that you can get. When the students want to know something, they immediately, I'll look it up.
The system we had in place prior to this was a very PC-oriented, old, lockdown system. And I mean, Vicki Lyons, our IT director, she's led the charge along with us, pushing and pushing and pushing, and it wasn't easy. What Vicki has done and others have done have really created openness and flexibility and willingness to change and give information rather than withhold it. And this is something that has been worthy of all the work and effort and resources that have been devoted to it.
He said it wasn't easy. It required incredible leadership to push and make an incredible difference in the lives of kids. And I just want to thank both of you for your leadership and coming here and sharing your stories. Thank you very much. Appreciate it. Thanks, Greg. Vicki, thank you. Thanks, Salty. We have one more story that we would like to share. Again, it's going to be a discussion. We talked about user choice driving Mac in business. We talked about personal learning driving Apple in education and student equity and understanding the whys. The last story of mobile transformation. I mentioned yesterday that there's a transformation story in healthcare that I want you to hear. This is actually, hearing your stories is